So, one of the other people I reached out to, and like I said, Scott, if you have something you want to talk about from a particular year that we skip over, but I reached out
No,
to,
I get in trouble when I talk too much. So you guys go right ahead.
so I reached out to Makana, who is one of the guys. I think you had like a little batch of kids who marched like 0304. Like Ivan did that. I want to say Nico maybe. Um,
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That was also the RCC connection too. When I worked RCC the early 2000s. Yeah.
so he brought up a couple things to me that I thought were interesting. One of those was uh, the pace of change in the activity during that era, because he brought up that not even just the percussion section, but I want to say the full ensemble was doing stuff like scat singing during the show at that time and a little bit of dancing. And the way he put it to me was, but they were still losing percussion. And I mean, I would point out, and maybe you would, too, that they won in '03, so there were points being scored in other places. But what I saw, because I went back and I sort of binge watched the 2000s, and I mean, and you see things when you just watch year after year after year. And what I saw was there was change trying to happen. And I want to say with a lot of it led by you guys, maybe you guys in the Guard, where the percussion features just got more interesting, like a little bit less than just ramming. There was more effect going on, you know?
'03 was a major change for the Blue Devil organization.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Scott Chandler, who was the Guard choreographer, caption head for many years since the 90s. I think it might have been a little before '03, but definitely '03. He became the coordinator, the show coordinator for the first time. And up to then it was such a collaboration of designers, drum guy, pit guy, visual guy, brass guy, guard person, and there was really nobody in charge. It was just, we got to do this, we got to do this. And so there was battles and fights and whatever you want to call them, and just, arguments about what was more important. And we, as a staff, we would sit down and go, someone should just have the final say. We need one person, make the call, you're the final say, and everybody's going to agree with that no matter what. Scott was so successful in the indoor color guard world. If you ever seen his resume as far as the groups that he touched and worked with and what they've accomplished, it's ridiculous how many times they've won. And everything was really fresh and really new and very creative. And it's like, well, Scott's got to be the guy, So he became the coordinator for the concepts, everything. And that's also when we changed how we wrote the show musically. Dave Glyde became the music director in 2003, which means that's the first time he wrote, and he had help, before that, Wayne Downey did the brass book. Now Dave Glyde was doing the brass book with the help of Wayne. Dave was doing the drum book with the help of me. He would even do the pit lines with the help of whoever the pit instructor was at the time. But Dave had the final say in the musical book, and Scott was part of the musical book too. He goes, no, we need it to sound like this. No, I need a rim shot here. I need this there. And so the whole show all of a sudden became a coordinated production. And if you look back at those years, from any, year before that, and then you hit 2003, it's a completely different thing. I remember to this day as we're walking on the field for retreat in '03. Right after we performed, had no idea what the outcome was. I went up to Scott, I gave him a big hug, and I'd go, thank you. I go, I've never seen us this different and this successful. No matter what the numbers are, it was just that we were doing something completely different and very, very well done too. I mean, the production value was off the charts, I thought. So, and that was all, that was a major change from '03. That still goes on today. I mean, we're at 2021 right now, 2021, and it's still the same thing. Scott's still the coordinator and Glyde's still the musical director, and we all get our lickets in there, but it still comes down to, basically those two guys.
Wayne Downey is an icon. I mean, brass
Absolutely.
icon.
Absolutely.
Was that transition hard for him, letting somebody else take the reins musically? Or did he welcome that transition?
I think he welcomed it because he was still very involved. He's still involved today, basically. He's still around all the time. But no, he was still involved. Yeah, I don't think he had any issues with it, not that I know of, and I still I mean, I've known Wayne since the early 70s, so I see him more in Tokyo than I do in the US, which is kind of weird, but we teach the same group over in Tokyo all the time. So I usually hang out with Wayne a lot more in Japan than I do in the US nowadays. But now Wayne was a big part of the Blue Devil history, organization, success, you name it. A lot of this, the reason we're still here is a lot of stuff because of Wayne. So absolutely, he's still involved. He's still involved.
One of these days, George and I always talk. One of these days, we're gonna have to have some brass people on, because I know we have a faction of listeners that are horn people, and they reach out every once in a while. When are you gonna have a horn guy on? And I don't know. One of these days.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
So are you guys gonna ask the brass questions, or are you gonna get some brass guys?
Oh, see, that's what I try to work out in my head. It's like, I don't know.
Because I can see George right now talking to Wayne. So in 1994, how come the snare feature wasn't longer?
Oh, that's awesome.
I have no complaints about 94. We were so catered to. I still remember.
Oh, here we go.
I still remember. Yeah, I mean, literally. I still remember Jay Murphy coming down and saying, "Okay, like you guys are going to be in between the hashes, like in front of the front hash, and you're just never going to leave that during your feature." We were like, "Thank you," because in previous years we were like in the back, sort of making these big sweeping moves around the back. The other thing that Makana brought up, which I thought was super interesting, because it's something that every generation of any great group does, which is he wondered if you felt like his lines stacked up to the lines from the 90s. And I thought that was super interesting of him to ask that, because I felt that. I was like, when I marched, I was a fan of the 80s Blue Devils drumlines. And even during our most successful time, I was like, this isn't as good as those lines. And I guess it's just something that we do, as members, because we were a certain age and of a certain level when we're looking at that. And then when we're in it, it doesn't feel as, amazing. What do you think about that, and about comparing lines generation to generation like that, or decade to decade?
You can't do it. It's impossible. The rules have changed. Everything has changed. The visual responsibilities have changed. The athleticism has changed. Again, being a sports fan, I mean, the big talk, Michael Jordan versus LeBron James, like back in Jordan days, they used to beat him up and get away with it. You could physically knock guys down and you're fine. It's a foul. Nowadays you touch somebody and you can get kicked out of the game. I mean, same thing with football with the receivers. They used to get mugged coming off the sidelines, to try to get open. Nowadays you can't touch them for 5 yards, or can't touch them after 5 yards. I mean, the rules have changed, and it's the same with drum corps. I mean, the tick era is over. You can't just stand still and play clean and get away with it like we did in the 70s and early 80s. You have to move now. You got to move a lot more. You got to bring a lot more to the table, a lot more creativity to the table. It's not just about playing a clean paradiddle anymore. There's a lot more involved. So I don't think you can really compare the decade to decades. People always ask me what's my 3 favorite lines. And I think the first one is still the biggest influence I'd ever had was 75 Santa Clara Vanguard. That's my first. After that, it's probably 76 Blue Devils, because that's the first one that I marched in. And then you got like 83 Blue Devils, and you got 09 Blue Devils. Those are the lines that always stick out to me. And they're all different decades pretty much, just because that's what I remembered. And it's all different times. There's no way the 70 line can play what the 09's playing now. There's no way the 09, well, maybe the later guys now can definitely play what we played back then. But I don't know if they can play it on that equipment, because it's a lot different equipment back then too.
Okay, so let me ask the question a different way. Instead of it being
you're trying to get me in trouble. You're trying to get me in trouble.
No, I'm actually trying to give you an out, because one of the other people I talked to was Regwa, and he brought up some great stuff. And so what Regwa said, one of his memories is that he remembered that in 06 that you mentioned that line reminded you of 99. I assume in a good way. So there's one thing about like comparing who's better, but then there's another thing just about similarities and about, the character of a line, because you've taught so many kids by now. It's like, you know, you teach the same kids over and over again. They're just in different bodies. Can you, I don't know if you remember that at all, but can you talk at all about why '06, you know, had that same spirit or whatever it was that reminded you of 99? And can you think of any other relationships like that where a line from one generation will remind you, for whatever reason, of a line from another generation?
I don't remember that exact moment. The '06 show was The Godfather, I believe, right? Let me check my notes. Yeah, that was The Godfather Part Blue. That we had some individual solos in that show. A lot of individuals got to stick out and do some things, which was kind of different for the times, whatever. I remember that line was stacked with talent, you know, as far as the hands were concerned. And that was, 99 was the same way, that's for sure. You know, every section, not just the snares, but every section was like, could play anything. And I remember '06 being close to that too. And I think it's just more of a confidence thing, you know, the more confident they were and a little bit of cockiness, I guess. But that's what I remember about the Godfather year with those guys was, you know, it was a fun show to do. That's when we tried to get rid of duts instead of dut 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 dut, you know, because I'm the dut police. I don't want audience to hear the duts. And when I judge WGI for anybody who's listened to a tape of mine that uses duts, I'm gonna kill you because that's the most unmusical thing in the world that we hear. You know, if you have to say something for an attack, I understand. Say something that has to do with the show. Make it part of your concept, you know. So we had parts in the '06 show where it was Vito Corleone play, you know, or something that made sense with The Godfather. So we actually changed duts from back then. I think we're back to duts nowadays, but we try to just make them so you don't hear them as much on the front sidelines. But I remember that line was just full of talent. You know, that was a fun line. The '06 and definitely the '07 line too. That was fun. That was a tough line. The '07 line. We worked our butts off that year. That was a very satisfying win at the end because that was we worked really hard that season.
Yeah. Plus it was in California, so that was kind of cool.
The only time it was California, you know. And I got it. And if we want to go there, let's go there. But man, that was one of my favorite walk into a stadium shows ever. Was finals night, walking into the stadium at the Rose Bowl in '07. Because let's face it, we never had DCI on the West Coast, right? It's always East Coast, Midwest, wherever. And we win a lot, and people don't like that. And you know, I remember walking into Allentown, Pennsylvania years, and they would just boo us, not even be sad about it, just like going, oh my God, what are we doing here? You know, but we walked into that stadium, and whoever was on before us, they were just leaving the field, and the crowd just started going crazy. I remember walking in going, oh my God, we're home. This is awesome. It's like we have people that are, you know, our fans, which we never really have on the road, that's for sure. So that was, to me, that was an amazing feeling walking into the stadium in '07.
Home court advantage.
Heck yeah. Talking 99 real quick. I got a couple questions here from Mitch Casados. Who marched 99. You know,
yeah, section leader.
Dr. Casados, I guess.
Yeah, Dr. Mitch.
Man, he doing big things. But the first thing he wanted to ask, you know, he wanted to tell you that how thankful he is, you know, for all he contributed to his hands and history and giving him a chance to be in the line. But his first question was, being that all of the most amazing lines have great hands, yet not all lines with great hands win. Can you give your perspective on how you develop, synergize elite hands with elite minds? And in parentheses, he puts concentration and smarts, and elite hearts. And then in parentheses, he goes warrior spirit / brotherhood. Working together to create the intangibly championship level clean that the most memorable lines seem to have.
That's a lot, Mitch. That's definitely coming from a doctor.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. But you could tell he put some thought into this. So.
Way too much. Just play clean, Mitch. Just play clean. The only thing I would try to answer that is I try to make sure that the guys that are marching next to these other people, everybody's friendly. They all get along. You know, because I've had the opposite. We've had a few lines in the earlier year, much earlier years, where there was some rub. The tenors didn't like the snares didn't like the tenors. This guy didn't like this guy, you know, and it showed in the performance. It was, you know, it was not healthy. It was not good. And it definitely was rubbing the performance aspect because of the fact off the field they didn't get along, for example. So, I mean, even in the audition process today, the way we do it is we have our auditions. Everybody comes through the door. I'll grab the vets and pull the vets over and say, okay, what about Bobby? What about Johnny? What about, oh yeah, he's great. He's cool. He's cool. This guy, I don't know about this guy. He's all right. I go, okay, well, that's not a good sign. So you look at that closely for the next couple of days, whatever. But I ask their opinions because they got to live with them all summer. You got to get along with these people, and that's how you create that synergy to go out there and want to accomplish the same thing. And I say this every year. I mean, you have the chance to be the best in the world at something. Other than Olympics, professional sports, what else is there? I mean, I don't know what else you could be the best in the world where you receive this award other than a musical activity like this. So it's pretty special. And, you want to make sure everyone's on the same page and everybody gets along because you're all striving for that same goal. So the more you can relate to each other and be friendly to each other, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talk about attitude can kind of contribute to crushing a line, and I've seen that happen. You said you had some issues before. Have you ever had issues where you've had to cut people for attitude reasons, or like you notice early on in the auditions that this just isn't going to work out?
Oh yeah, in auditions as well as we cut in Santa Clara '92. We actually did we end up with 8 snares or 7? Whatever it was, we cut one guy in LA on tour, and it was all attitude related. It was like, this is not working out. I mean, and he said some stuff he shouldn't have said to the wrong person, and that got back to me, and it's like, you're out, pack your bags, you're done. It happens. I mean, it hasn't happened in a long time. And I honestly think, this is weird, but the members are better today. I think kids are better today. I think the internet's kind of changed the way everybody is seen because they know everything is recorded now. So I do think that the mentality and just the betterness comes out of people, if that makes sense. I honestly think that's something that's helping everybody right now.
Oh yeah, we definitely had some people chips on their shoulders back then, and Georgia probably would agree with that.
100%.
Yeah.
I had some chips on my shoulders.
George had a few chips. I had to knock a couple off. Some are still there.
Let me ask you this: Did you ever see it going wrong, and you were able to turn it around in a way that was memorable to you? Like before it got too bad.
Well, I would say the '93 Santa Clara line. I mean, that was wrong from the beginning. So it wasn't like we saw it turning wrong. It was wrong from the beginning, and we had to turn it around. And it took us all season to be able to do that. But really after that, and again, I'm, extremely fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, with the Blue Devils over the last however many years, 20 something years, we're starting into 2000s now. It was, we get amazing performers, we get extremely intelligent people. If there's an attitude issue, it usually comes out really early and we can catch it before we even make the cuts, so it's part of the process. If you can't get along with this guy, you're probably not going to make the line, so I think people, because of these podcasts, people know that now. So they're going to come in, and if they have an attitude, they're going to leave it at the back door.
Well, what's funny about that, Scott. So, Sean Vega famously does the same thing at RCC. Like he'll interview and get a real temperature for, who would be good for chemistry in the line. I do that with groups that audition. And here's what's interesting is, I will tell the kid that's why he's being cut. Because it's not about having a good audition it's not about having a good attitude at the audition. It's about who's marched with you before. What have you done in previous seasons? And obviously people can grow. But I feel like giving that kind of information, obviously in the right way, is an opportunity for growth for kids. Because there were a couple of kids that I can think of right off the top of my head that had some of the best hands to make a group, but there were other kids that were like, I hope that person isn't marching. Are you considering taking that person? And they were considering leaving because of that. So that kind of stuff. And like you said, because of podcasts, because of the internet, and just because of how much we know so much more about what goes on, people are way more aware of that stuff. It really matters. And it matters to the level of excellence that you can achieve in a season.
It's a big part of what we do. It's a big part of the audition process is, are you a good person? Seriously, I mean, that's it. And again, we're fortunate. I mean, I have a waiting list, and the guys who make the line know that. They know that you made this line, and if there's an issue, I got 5 guys that are waiting to take your spot in a heartbeat, so, and so they understand from day one that it's, they gotta be the right person. Yeah, it's a big part of it.
So getting back to the 2000s, the first year, so I was actually surprised because when I was sort of binging through those years, even though there was innovation going on, I did sort of feel like in a general sense, I noticed the big change in 2003, but in a general sense, it was still, it obviously hadn't evolved to the point that it had today. But 2005 was a year, that was the dance derby year. Where there were sort of like there was like a story being told through the Guard in between every musical number. What did that seem like a big departure of trying something new for you guys? Because from the outside, it certainly seems so.
Oh, we definitely tried something new that year. That actually came from an indoor color guard show that Scott Chandler did. I think it was, I want to say Logan High School, but I could be wrong on that. But they did dance derby, and it in reverse. It was that dance derby from they used to have back in the days, right? Where it's a marathon dance, and whoever the last two standing wins. But they did it reverse style. So, and that was our whole concept. Maybe this could work on a football field. As the drum corps thing. So Scott brought that to the table. To me, the biggest thing about that year, as far as innovation, was we attempted. I think we failed, but we attempted. That's when the keyboards were on the field. They weren't in the front sidelines because we needed room for this dance floor, if you want to call it that. And we had cots laid down because the dancers would have to get times they could rest and whatever, which was awesome, by the way, for rehearsal to have cots on the field for the staff because it was perfect. I'm going to sit here as the drumline flies by, then I could yell at you. But we had individual speakers underneath each keyboard. That was our sound system with wireless mics. Everything was wireless. We had a battery pack on each marimba and each vibraphone, and there was actually a speaker unit under the marimba. So everything was self-contained. Each individual keyboard was self-contained. And we thought that was going to be the newest thing. The problem was it all had to be mixed beforehand. You can't change the mix. This is way before iPads and everything else that you could do nowadays. So it was like, okay, this is going to be the sound settings for your board. Hopefully we don't have to change it during the show because we're not going to be able to tell you how to change it. And so that we obviously had issues with that down the road. But we tried something completely different that year with all that. And the guy who was saying the Yowza Yowza, the narrator of this dance derby, was Brian, our marimba player, who was literally playing the music while he was speaking and doing the announcing, which to me I thought he did a phenomenal job. But yeah, I don't think the show worked for DCI. At least it didn't work that year for DCI. They weren't. And I don't remember if the core was, to be honest, that good. I'm trying to remember I don't remember as far as the talent level.
Maybe the show lost something in translation between Winter Guard to.
Oh yeah, absolutely it did. Yeah, no, I would say absolutely it did. Yeah, that was, of course, the joke still goes today. Yowza, 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 yowza.
Yeah.
But that's, I do feel like, like I said, after sort of watching them all in a row, that the 2000s, like seeds were planted in different years that ended up, becoming fundamental to what you guys do now. I wanted to ask you about 2007 because Regwa had brought up something else, and you had mentioned Allentown, and also just how much, what kind of a journey that year was. But he specifically wanted me to bring up JJ Pipitone's judging tape from Allentown that year because he said that JJ went nuts on that particular tape. I don't know if you remember that at all, but also
I do remember that.
But also like speaking to like, oh, we got a shot, like this could like it could all come together,
I don't remember I don't remember the drum season as far as competitive wise. I think we were like all over the road, first to fifth or whatever. I can't remember what, but we won that year. We ended up winning at the end. I remember that, which was a shock, not a shocker, but we worked our butts off, like I said. But I remember Allentown, and there's a couple sections of the show that were kind of impossible, but we just figured, okay, we can't change it now. We got to leave it in, guys. Sorry. We had the snake drill that we did through the horn line, and it was this roll passage, basically. It was a striplet roll passage from what I remember. But it was while it was snaking through, from vertical to horizontal until the listening situations were crazy. And we worked that more hours than we probably worked anything ever in the history of the Blue Double Drumline. And they nailed it at Allentown. And JJ was in the front of the snake with him the whole time, from what I remember. And he's literally screaming on the tape that he can't believe that we're doing this. It was one of those tapes where he got on. There was another judge too. Did we have percussion too then? I'm trying to remember, because I remember at the critique talking to two judges, percussion judges, and they both were just freaking out going, I can't believe you guys pulled that off. I can't believe you're doing that. And that's when I realized, okay, we got the judges on our side now. Now if we can pull it off, if we can get everything else clean, we got a shot at this. I do remember that very well. Yeah. And the fact that I was going to be in California for the first time ever, that was huge, as far as just to have DCI closer to home than it's ever been. The only time ever.
Is that tape out there somewhere in the wild?
Maybe. I'm sure it's not that. I mean, it's not that long ago. Did that?
I have no idea.
I know you talked about not, sort of being focused on the percussion as much. But that, that was that was winning the caption again after a little bit of a drought,
Yeah. 10-year drought for percussion, I think, right? 97 to 07.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The mid 2000s, to me, that's like the early era of electronics. Was it hard figuring out what you wanted to do with the electronics? Do you remember that at all?
Still is. It's evolving, obviously. It's evolving like crazy, right? Yeah, I mean, it's real interesting today versus when we first had them. I mean, okay, we use microphones now. Okay, cool. We can now use amp everything, and we can now add synthesizers, which we couldn't do for a long time. So now we have pianos out there and everything else. And what's interesting is we just created all these different layers now that we have to balance, right? Before it was drums, marimbas, brass. Okay, balance those three things, you're good, right? Marimbas being the front ensemble. And then, okay, we're going to add this. Now we're going to add this. Now we're going to add this piano voice. Now we're going to add this violin. Now we're going to add this. All of a sudden, we just keep stacking all these voices that we have to balance for this activity, with score sheets. That's the problem, right? I mean, any other musical act you ever go to, they're not concerned about that because it's not being judged in numbers and placements, but with our activity the way it is, it's a little bit different, where you have to think about the balance of things. And to me, one of the biggest things, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I got to say it. Some of our judges, I think, are judging like they expect the balance to be what it was in the 80s or the 90s, because that's what drum corps is, and that's how they grew up, right? And growing up in that era, whatever it is, that's the music that you listen to. The music that we listen to is what we like, the balance that we like. Well, guess what? The kids today, man, they like their bass pumping. They like their cars shaking. That's the music they listen to. That's their balance, So I know this is weird to say, but I honestly think music balance is changing, as far as Main Street. But some of our drum corps people think, no, this is still drum corps. It needs to sound like this, where that's probably not very accurate. I think it could sound like whatever you want it to sound like, to just stay up with the times for one thing. And I'm from the old school. I mean, I'll still complain to Dave Glyde, man, that bass is too loud. Man, that bass is too loud. And then you get to the show site and the kids are freaking out. They're loving it. I'm going, okay, never mind. It's just me. It's my OG. I get it. But I do think that balance in music in general, not just drum corps, has changed. But we still have some drum corps people who think this is the balance that drum corps should be, which I disagree with.
Yeah. They don't want to let go and move on to the newer stuff,
So